Yeah, all right. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, for inviting me here. It's an honor really to talk about a topic which is, of course, very close to my heart. And I think sharing some experiences about permafrost outreach is great, and especially since we have a very new and really cool citizen science project at the Alfred Wegener Institute, which is on the topic of permafrost and which I would like to introduce you to. I entitled my presentation Behind the Scenes or Science because I think it's very important to give an authentic insight in how science is conducted and what research is about and permafrost research is about. And it's important, important way to reach an audience, no matter whether it's kids or adults. So first of all, a few words about myself and where I'm coming from. I did my PhD a few years ago, so slowly moving out of the early career status, I realized, working on thermokarst lakes and landscape dynamics to reef from sediment cores. And I continued to work with my dear colleague here at AVI and also with Katie Walter-Anthony from the UAF and Fairbanks, working on lakes in the central Alaska, but also northern Alaska and western Alaska, mostly focusing on carbon dynamics. And since then, I slowly moved more into the coordination part of science, supporting early career scientists with trainings. This was when I was working with APEX, the Association of Polar Early Career Scientists. And at the same time, I was leading some efforts on knowledge transfer, which I'm going to present you today. In between, kind of recently, I was director of APEX for about 1.5 years. And since I handed over the directorate office to Tromsø in Norway just last February, I'm kind of back in the permafrost business, really enjoying it, coordinating this new citizen science project called Undercover Ice Agenten, which I'm presenting today, and it's kind of translating into undercover ice agents, discovering permafrost, as a citizen scientist. So that's where I'm coming from, and now the big question: why science communication? Aren't we all busy enough with producing good science and good data already? Well, yes, of course, but scientific findings and scientific evidence and facts should be the base, should inform public decision making, also political decision making wherever possible. And plus, it's fun and it gives a really good portion of meaningfulness to our work, I think, and I hope you agree as well. So the big question is now how to do good science communication without overloading our audience. So as in private life and in professional life, in any situation, the level of communication between the sender and receiver can very much make a difference whether a message is successfully received. And just yesterday, I went to a workshop at the Federal Ministry of Education and Research here in Germany. And an organization called NAVIC presented the NAVIC arrow, which I found very simple, but it left a good impression to me. And it was speaking about science communication needing 5 areas or categories to be covered. And if one is failing, the whole thing is falling apart. And basically it was demonstrated physically at the workshop yesterday, and the arrow fell apart. Usually one of these 5 are kind of already fixed, and the rest is deeply influenced by that. So for example, if a specific audience is approaching you, the communication style or even the goal you can reach isn't that flexible anymore. If it's a certain newspaper you are writing for, the medium is kind of clear, so the audience again or the topic might be narrowed down already. And it's just really important to consider all these 5 areas when trying to go to do good science communication, I think. So the tricky thing for us as scientists is that we are coming from a certain academic background, plus a cultural background, of course. So finding a common language is not always easy. So here are a few mediums of communication I could explore over the past years, and which some of them were more fun than others, I would say. Like experimenting with methane, of course, was super exciting, and some are also more natural to me than others, I have to say. So presenting online, for example, is a whole different story than being in personal contact with the audience. And for example, radio presentations which like radio is usually something, a medium which people are listening to like on the side and not like super actively. So you need to be like very strong in your words and repeat the things if you really want them to be transferred. That's things I learned. And of course, there are also different materials which came out of some of my dear colleagues' recent engagements. The new permafrost map of Natariuk, you probably know, it's also behind my back here. It is a good example of a clear message, for example, and actually it's going to be part of a whole atlas which is currently in the making. You may also know the Frozen Ground cartoons, which are not only just for kids and have been translated into 9 languages by now. And any visuals like video or data animations are really a great resource. I'm sure you also, all of you know the Tunnelman videos on YouTube. Yeah, so this is really just to name a few. And now I would like to show you the angle of our project, the angle of communication we took. The project is called Permafrost im Wandel, which is again more like a national effort, translating into permafrost change. And I want to show you what our approach of knowledge transfer was. The aim of this rather small but very, I think, valuable project, small in terms of budget and capacity, but I think very impactful project. The aim was to make permafrost accessible. So if you remember that I'm based in Germany, in the mid-latitudes, the Arctic is very far away, and permafrost is still mostly unknown, and that may be still like a surprise, but people really need to first learn what permafrost is. So making the topic of permafrost change known is one thing, but allowing people and kids to make their own experience with this matter is another, I realized. So the aim was to allow the audience to use all their senses and offer sustainable learning, basically. And the important element of this project was actually kind of easy to bring real permafrost into classrooms. So real like samples we took in the field. So, and also to let it thaw and to let people touch and smell it. And of course, also feeling a bit like a polar researcher by wearing this heavy RV suits here helped too. This is my own little boy who really enjoyed it, I have to say. And yeah, secondly, also having a chance for a very direct exchange with researchers is very important. I realized showing videos and photos is always helpful. And plus we have a few more elements we produce, which I'm going to show you. Yeah. So of course we have planned a lot of interactions, and actually also we did science festivals and school workshops, but many of the activities also moved online in these COVID years. But with this, we actually increased at least our reach. But the actual aim of the project was really this interactive communication. Before I show you the materials, I'm actually very proud to say that I just learned today that I got nominated for the Potsdam Science Communication Award for this project. So you have to wish me luck on the 1st of June when all shortlisted candidates are presenting and pitching the project to the jury and the public. So I was happy to learn that today. Yeah, the first topic we actually tackled in this project. Oops. Was actually the vastness and the large area of the permafrost region. Showing maps is one way, but making some assumptions based on the size of wooden tiles we created actually make people think. And we have produced those tiles here in this size of ice sheets, of snow, of sea ice, of glaciers, also of Germany as a comparison. So this is, for example, these are the glaciers compared to permafrost. And it's really interesting to see how people approach these kind of estimates. Usually glaciers are very much overestimated, because I think because people know glaciers by going skiing and know that they're retreating much more from the media and causing sea level rise, for example. Also Greenland ice sheet is also among those examples. It's often overestimated for the same reason, because it's on the map usually like way too large, and also known for its decrease. And in fact, snow was the largest one, and permafrost is the third largest, following the Antarctic ice sheet. So I gave you actually the solution already here. So yeah, bringing some awareness to the large area of permafrost is aim of this little game even. So what is happening when this large area of permafrost is thawing? That's another topic we tackled. So I already said that bringing real permafrost is very valuable, and letting it thaw over time in order to actually show what is happening to landscapes, infrastructures, and housing. We also developed a very simple experimental setup. Basically, just with mid-latitude soil and ice, and we let it thaw over time. And while recording the settling of the surface in these columns we developed, and watching this happening also toy pipelines and streets in this box, people actually get a feeling what the effect of permafrost thaw is on the landscape. And here's a time-lapse video I would like to show you very briefly. It's only a few seconds. So we found this kind of experiments very, very helpful, and but of course you need a little bit of time with the people you're working with. Similar to the wooden tiles, we also developed a poster and wooden boxes to kind of symbolize amount of carbon stored in different pools. And the size of the boxes correlate with the gigatons of carbon in the atmosphere, vegetation, fossil fuels, and permafrost, of course, in the atmosphere. And just to give you one example, this is, for example, even the 822 gigaton in the frozen permafrost in the sediments, compared like almost the same size to the atmosphere. This is vegetation, for example. So just to give you people some relation to it, and there's a solution is inside, so they can actually kind of test themselves. And we also have little weight bags, so that to give people a feeling on the relation between the different pools. A very simple way of making permafrost landscapes and degradation features visible. Also these beautiful 3D prints, which my dear colleague Luca produced from DEMs and LiDAR data. So we have a thermokarst landscape with many lake generations from the Lena Delta of Siberia. We have a thermo-erosional valley in Alaska, where on the one side a tundra fire produced some really nice polygons, and on the other side they are not as much present. And we also have a huge salt slump from the northwest Canada and near the Beaufort Sea, which I think gives a really good impression on what's happening to permafrost landscapes when they're degrading. And to illustrate the changes of permafrost landscapes, we produced flipped images. The ones where the images actually change when you look from different angles. And we have, for example, one with a retreating coastline. I'm not sure you can actually see that here in the video. I don't know. So it's 12 meters within 7 days. So it's the coast on the Alaska North Slope, the fastest retreating coastline. We have also a tundra fire, which develops within a month to 220 square kilometers. which I think is very impressive. And there are also lakes developing on training. It's a lake from my PhD study. You may not see that. This is from Suez Peninsula. So I think just very easy, simple tools, but still, I hope they leave an impression to the people looking at it. And finally, the last one I want to show you is a virtual reality tool, which we developed. Basically from images from many expeditions we made, and my dear colleague Maren put them together so that people actually can enjoy the kind of immersive view on permafrost affected landscapes in winter and in summer. So this is what we have developed until end of last year. Now we have the great chance actually to move one step further, which is a new project I would like to show you. It's a citizen science project on the topic of permafrost. It's called Anmakerweisagenten. And in hopefully less COVID problematic times, we have a chance to actually bring all these topics of climate change and permafrost change into classrooms and using the tools we created in the earlier project. But the aim is also to kind of empower indigenous youth and bring their research questions and learn from them in this project. And also, of course, it's about strengthening the databases for permafrost models and AI development. So here's the concept of this project. We are visiting Northwest Canada, bringing drones with us to our partner school in Aklavik, Moose Care School. And framed by some workshops and drone trainings with the kids and teachers, we asked them to fly the drones over the landscapes of their interest and of permafrost landscapes, which are changing a lot. Based on their local expertise and also of their interest, of course, in the grounds for berry picking, for hunting, camping, etc. We expect a lot of data to be collected, a lot of images. And these images will be looked at and analyzed by school kids in Germany. So again, framed by workshops and knowledge transfer activities, which we will offer. So in this project, we're actually hoping to get a lot of data on time series of high resolution images, and on the other hand, also train algorithms or get better and efficient algorithms for analysis of massive data by actually having labeled data, because the school kids in Germany will actually decide whether they see permafrost or not, whether they see polygons or degradation features. And for this, we are currently developing an app to be used on phone or also on the browser. And the tasks these young scientists will actually get, they're kind of divided into very small subtasks handled by many citizen scientists. We're thinking also of a classification between different degradation status, but it depends a bit on how we will test it with the citizen scientists, of course, to see which level of application we can use. We were also thinking of letting them kind of digitalize permafrost polygon features. And, of course, we will create some tutorials for them, background information, and also including feedback rounds with the kids and teachers, and see how we can develop the app in the way it's understandable and still like fun to do. So we are also developing teaching materials and kind of a learning or a data and communication platform. And if it all works out the best way, I think it would be really nice to have actually really exchange between the Canadian and the German audiences. I think it's very valuable for both of them to see what else is happening in the world, and it's all connected in the climate system. The drones we are applying are actually very basic, very cost-effective consumer-grade drones. And our partner, the German Aerospace Center, is currently working on the challenging task of having easy-to-use applications, but still fulfilling the scientific standards. And soon we will be hopefully ready to map these beautiful but vanishing landscapes. And yeah, currently we are getting ready for the first visit to Muskia School in the Northwest Territories, and we are indeed very excited for that. So we are planning to be there in September. And yeah, I'm very curious to hear your opinion on that, and also learn from you what you think is worth, like in terms of sharing with different audiences. And of course, I would be happy to have any comments and feedbacks also on our efforts, which we are planning for this project. Thank you so much for having me here.
This is great. Thank you so much. I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to give everyone else an opportunity first to ask you questions. Feel free to put them in the chat box as well. Maybe I can get us started with one. Have you identified outreach efforts that do not work, where you feel like we've tried this multiple times and there's a poor reaction to it, or people don't understand it, or they misunderstand something? Is there something that you say, nah, don't do that, it doesn't work?
I think I never had like one method or one approach which did not work, but it was sometimes just not getting the audience. And I think like recently I had a tour with students visiting us here, and we had, because the group was large, I divided it into two, and they gave my presentation twice, and the other group did something else. And I could just feel it was like not the right time for the second group. They had already they're only hungry, I guess, or something. They were not super attentive anymore. And I think sometimes it's just like the group dynamic or timing or your connection with the group. And the first one was super excited and asked a lot of questions, and they could not really relate it to a different presentation. So I think it's important to keep in mind what background and age range you have in a group. Sometimes it's just like, for example, you need to also get the emotional connection with them. So I saw others, like other efforts or presentations where I could tell it was like too high level sciencey, and the group was just expecting some insights and more to be entertained. So I think just keeping the audience in mind helps in any effort, even if it's, and also adjusting it while you're doing it, staying flexible. I can't think of one approach which never worked, and I tried hard at this moment.
I think keeping your audience in mind and preparing for that even at the beginning seems like the number one crucial thing to always consider. Yeah. Catherine, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation, Josefine. As you were showing younger children and how they can do some hands-on stuff and get involved, I tried to think back to when I was a child, and what did I learn about the earth? And I feel like it was not very much. I had a semester-long course when I was 14, and it seems like the earth was presented in sort of a static way. I guess that, evolution of the earth happened, and then the earth was just static, and there was the crust and the mantle and the core. And that's about all I remember. So it made me think that at least back then, kids weren't learning about the earth and the importance of the environment. And I was 14 in 1975, so a while back. But I'm interested in maybe what are children in Germany learning about the earth as kind of their baseline? And do you see gaps there? And is that part of the reason for your project?
That's a very good question, and comes back also to maybe the cultural differences in countries. So in Germany, it's very difficult because there are different federal states, and so the education system is basically different in every city or area. So it's really difficult to create like one curriculum for all. It doesn't work. So this is, and for some of them, actually, the geography is already like more social and human geography focused, and not that much in the physical world. And the polar regions in some states actually not even like part of their curriculum. So we need to adapt what we can actually bring into the classrooms very much. My feeling is, but it might be also a bubble I'm in, is that the environmental topic and is more into focus now, but it could be also that it's because I want to see this kind of development and helping it like move forward into really tackling environmental questions in schools. But I think it differs a lot, like regionally in Germany and even internationally. I can't even say like. I would guess that approaches are also, coming back to the first question you asked, Christina, are very different. But I would like to learn from you what works in the US and what can we in Germany also learn from different approaches, because it's not well covered, I would say, in Germany either.
Kristen.
So I really liked your presentation, and I actually really enjoyed like that box thing and your video of that. I could see incorporating that into my, like right now I just have a picture of a guy standing in a crack in a road, and I feel like that video is a little more interactive, and so you have some really good resources. And I guess I kind of wanted to maybe ask you or the larger group. I mean, my big problem is I'm the one who's like, hey, I'm willing to talk about permafrost, like who, and so I reach out to my kids' schools, or when Skype a scientist contacts me, but like, there's not a really good mechanism. I'm willing to share what I know, but there's not a great mechanism of how to do that, as well as like, I do it on my own time, kind of, right? Like it's not a part of our job descriptions. I think it's something we all want to do. And so like, is there some sort of bigger organization, or does anyone have ideas about how to make it less a personal thing where like I just raise my hand as much as I can to volunteer? Can we get anyone have any ideas or thoughts about that? I would love talking about it.
I actually had a similar question to that. And Josefine, I'm going to just add mine real quick. It's probably a lot about resources. Do we have funding available? Do we have is it like viewed positively from our supervisors if we do outreach, or less? And I'd be curious what Avi's approach is.
That's a good question. I mean, we have the same feeling here that there's no good collective way in building the bridge between science and schools, either also in Germany, not. In general, the Polar Educators International Network is a good network to work with when you're like proactively actually looking for ways to get engaged. But I think it's missing some system of connecting people of similar interests or supporting each other. And at AVI, I would say it's the same. We have a lot of great ideas, but not the resources on the side, like to work with them. So actually the Permafrost and Wandel, this first project I presented was only on communication. It was very small, but still it helped to get a few things started. But that's very rare also in our funding system. But my feeling is that it's actually more and more included in calls for funding, but that not a big portion of the budget is usually calculated for that. Does anyone else in this group has an idea how to connect schools and scientists in a more systematical way? It's not that I have the answers here, I guess.
I would say just in my role at the Park Service, like I was saying, there's this emphasis on interfacing with the public. And so in this type of agency, there are a lot of specialists where the scientists have people, they can funnel their information through the specialists, and the specialists include like science communication experts, like education people. So we have people who you can sort of deliver the science to them, and they will create a curriculum and then go out to schools and sort of that's what they do full time. And then also interpretive specialists. So if you go visit a national park or something like that, and there's a museum or something there, they've all been sort of trained, the science is being fed into the museum, and then they're taught how to do it, you know, and communicate it. So there's actually like a few layers between me and the public, which is not always optimal, you know. So as an example, I think this gets back to like knowing your audience. I recently submitted a paper to this journal called Frontiers for Young Minds. It's one of the Frontiers journals, and they accept papers for kids, and kids actually do the reviews as well. And the target audience of the paper was like 6th and 7th graders. And I had some of the editors review the language, and the language was like I hit the 10th and 11th grade mark. So I wasn't anywhere close to being able to like communicate to the 6th and 7th graders. And I thought I had like dumbed it down a lot. So I don't think we're like very well like calibrated to what certain age group or audience actually is going to hear when they, you know, we try to communicate with them.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you. I will look at the journal up. That sounds super cool.
I had never heard of that either. Miriam, you have a question.
Yeah, my question is more related to something you mentioned earlier about being in a mid-latitude location. So I live outside of Washington, D.C., and it is very far away from anything remotely resembling permafrost. So whenever I speak to anyone around here about permafrost, they always ask the question, why should I care about this? And so obviously because I study carbon, I bring it back to the impacts on climate and how that affects everybody. And then I also try to highlight, you know, that the people that are living in the Arctic and these indigenous communities are likely least responsible for the changes they're seeing. And so as a global citizen, we should care, but I always struggle with how to answer that. Like, everybody seems so selfish and needs it to be about themselves. So I don't know if you have a good answer for that.
I would go the same direction, but I always try to frame it positively. So even we can do something for the climate system and the changes like in the Arctic. We can even have an influence by reducing our emissions. Because of course this is critical of you always end with a very negative message of we're all gonna destroy the planet. So yeah, we can even do something here. Similar approach. I think the carbon cycle is the way to connect us with the Arctic.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're obviously seeing clear effects of sea level rise here in this area. For example, like Washington, D.C. is known for its cherry blossoms in the spring, but now the cherry trees are like underwater part of the day because of tidal inundation. And so the biggest draw to Washington, D.C. in the spring is like potentially being ruined by climate change. But so I think the connection is more straightforward, like talking about the loss of the Greenland ice sheet, for example, in here, but permafrost always seems like a little bit more farther removed.
But at the same time being some kind of exotic because it's not as visible as I just see Christina's comment here. I think it's also gives an opportunity to actually tell something new and to share some insights. It's still connected to the Arctic amplification. But it's interesting, yeah. Cherry blossoms are very visible for sure in the discipline. Catherine, I see your hand up.
Well, also Jeff, you had a question earlier, but then your hand went
sorry.
down. I don't know. Did your question get answered or?
Well, I was going to comment on the question of resources for doing outreach, and I was just going to say that my management at the Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities considers elements of outreach to be part of our mission. And in fact, my participation in IARPIC came from our management and said, "Hey, are you interested? Would you do this for us and represent the department?" And I've several times I've told our now commissioner, Ryan, this is I'm not spending a ton of time doing this stuff, but it's a non-trivial amount. Are you sure? No, that's part of our mission. So that's been my position there. I also wanted to comment on knowing your audience. In my case, normally the audience is somebody who either knows a little bit about permafrost already, or at least has experienced the damage to roads and things like that, and they're interested. And you don't have to be as good if you've got an interested audience, but if you're trying to reach out to kids who don't know anything about it and maybe don't care, the burden on getting them engaged and keeping them engaged is quite a bit higher. So I guess I'm lucky.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Catherine.
Yeah, I have two comments. One is that probably our international colleagues on the call here know, and certainly our US colleagues know, that climate change, whether it's seen through permafrost or melting glaciers and sea ice rise, is a politically charged topic, and I think that is probably now and probably into the future going to be a real obstacle toward getting Arctic science and how the world is changing in the Arctic into the curriculum, baked into the curriculum, the same way I learned about like the Earth's crust and mantle and stuff when I was a kid. And that's really unfortunate, but I think it's it's just a real tough reality for us. My second comment is kind of different and really touches on what Jeff was just saying about an interested audience. I am excited about doing some science communication and education for the adults who are interested in what's happening in the Arctic and know a little bit, but would like to know more. And I frequently use the example of, you see a schematic of the Arctic and there's a lot of red, and that's bad. But what does that schematic say? And the two things that quickly that people could these people could learn that would be very, very helpful is, one, how to orient yourself to what I call a polar centric map. If the North Pole is in the center, it can be hard to figure out where things are, because that's not what we're used to. But easy once you learn that. And then the second thing is that so many of our graphs and diagrams use an anomaly scale rather than an absolute scale. And once you know what that is and kind of understand what it is, you can look at these graphs and I think get so much more out of them. But probably a lot of the general public, even the concerned general public, don't know about the concept of an anomaly. And so when they see these graphs, they just get to, red is bad and darker red is probably worse. But they could get a lot farther with a little bit of knowledge on that. And those are my comments. Thanks.
We have a few more minutes if there are any more questions. I did like what Jeff said. Oh, sorry, John. Yeah, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just I was just curious if you have the flip cards where you can see the landscape change. Was that a digital design contract that you contracted out with to produce those? I think that would be really interesting to have, as a potential like broader impact type deliverable.
Yeah. Those cards. Yeah. So we actually contacted someone for the design, but also for the production. It's in German, but I think we didn't print it yet, but we do have an English translation. The thing is that this is kind of, I think one is like €7 or €8, just kind of expensive. So we're not like giving it out to school kids who would throw it away. It's really more like we tell them it's plastic. We do have also just normal cards, postcards for being more, spending them more on just giving them out. But probably could also share the print, the document or something, the version for that. I think it's really nice to actually give something in like haptic in your hands, but still having this impression on changes.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that like everyone knows the glaciers, but like looking at a burn scar or looking at coastal erosion or thermokarst lake dynamics, those are all things that are kind of hard to conceptualize or maybe think about, but be really nice to be able to see like that in such a little flip way. So yeah, that sounds really interesting to me. And yeah, I wouldn't mind knowing if you don't mind dropping in the chat or sending out who you contracted with, that'd be cool.
Yeah, sure. Or maybe I can send it to Christina or someone forward it to you.
Yeah, of course. I would be interested in that too. And I also just like Jeff's comment in the chat box. I really like the carbon cubes because they show the relative proportions. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Is your outreach mostly in the Potsdam, Berlin area, or do you actually cover all of Germany? That's already a big place.
It's a small country, but still it's a big place to go everywhere. But we did, we went to other cities when occasions popped up. So we went to Bremen for this Explore Science Festival, and in our new project we have our colleagues are in Jena and in Heidelberg. So there are other cities where we can actually apply our toolbox. And actually for the cubes, we are thinking whether we could produce some sheets for kids to actually print them and like craft them themselves on this paper. So I think some interactive task we could produce of it, and then it would be also easier to translate to English. Right now it's in German. And also potentially other languages. I think there's some potential here.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. We're at the end of our meeting. I think we've had a great presentation and lots of very interesting comments and questions. I'm sure Josefine is available via email if there are any more questions. And this presentation will be uploaded through iArtPic, I believe, as always. And so if you know of anyone who could not participate today, then they can always watch it later. And I also want to say again, John, welcome to iArtPic. I'm glad you're joining us as a team lead. And thank you everyone for participating and joining us today. I hope you have a great day. I don't know, Meredith, do you have any final comments?
Maybe just mentioning the next Permafrost Collaboration Team meeting, which is May 18th. And Christina, if you want to let people know what it will be on or who's speaking.
Yeah, we have Brendan Rogers from Woodwell Climate Research Center present on a very big and very new project called Permafrost Pathways. It's going to be interesting and actually has, I believe, a big outreach component. So if that topic is of interest to you, this webinar might also be of interest to you. We'll send an email in advance, but hopefully you can join us then. And again, Josefine, thank you for doing this late presentation.
Yes,
I
thank
have to
you.
thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay.
Okay,
Bye.
bye everyone.
I think.